1991's Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, claimed it would be the end of the Springwood Slasher. And when we saw his daughter, that never existed until this movie decided she did, despite the fact that we've flashed back to Freddy's past a dozen times and we'd never seen or heard about her before, when she blew Freddy to smithereens with a pipe bomb to create an embarrassingly horrendous 3D effect and the dream demon skeleton fish things came out, I think we were all set. This wasn't a situation where we were sad to see an icon go, you know? This was like John Cena leaving his sneakers and wristbands in the ring, in some sense. We all grew up with John Cena. We were hitting the "you can't see me" on our friends. We all eventually got tired of Super Cena destroying every new interesting heel so badly that they fizzled out almost immediately after losing to him. Blah, blah, blah. We loved him, we hated him, but deep down, we always appreciated him. This last run, though, with the atrocious heel turn with Travis Scott and The Rock, which I called immediately, by the way. Oh boy, did I get buried over this video, but watch it again and tell me I was wrong. Go ahead. To the no-reason face turn, to losing to Gunther in a match that had no heat and didn't need to happen and didn't really do anything for anyone. This farewell tour was, I mean, I'll call it like it is. It was a Nightmare on Elm Street 5 and 6. This was Dream Child and Freddy's Dead level stuff. So, much like John Cena, Freddy riding off into the sunset after the 6th movie, it kind of felt like, you know what? You probably could have gone sooner. I'm sorry this was your last go-round. You deserved better. You gave us too much for you to go out like this. But that's the way it is sometimes. And the promise of Freddy's demise held true, even through 1994 with the release of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Looking at the poster, it seems like they lied. It seems like Freddy Krueger had indeed returned, but he didn't. As you well know from the last video in this series, this wasn't Freddy Krueger. This was an actual demon taking the shape of a character from a film franchise. The character that this demon's wants and desires had been satiated through, even though fictional. This wasn't our tried and true icon. That guy was still dead, having lost his head inside of his head and the fish ghosts from the dream world, I don't know. Long story short, the Springwood Slasher would remain 6 feet under for nearly 10 years after New Nightmare's release. When Freddy did finally return, he could not do it alone. He needed a little help from another icon. Maybe you've heard of him, Jason Voorhees. Man, oh man. Today we're going all in on 2003's Battle of the Century, Freddy vs. Jason. After that, we set our sights on the 2010 remake of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which to this day acts as the final appearance of Freddy Krueger. No, I don't count a silly little cameo on a sitcom. You know what I'm talking about. Let's get real here. You know the drill by now, so grab a snack, grab something to sip on, and if you're on YouTube and you don't want to deal with the censorship and all of the VHS filters I have to apply to these videos nowadays just to not get in trouble, you can get the uncensored, unfiltered version over on Patreon. Is it annoying to have to make 2 versions of all of these videos? Yes, it is, but that's what we gotta do these days. And I will note right here at the top, I've already covered Freddy vs. Jason in great detail. Last year, I did the history of Friday the 13th. So you might be wondering, am I just gonna replay that entire video here? And to that I say, not exactly. I will replay most of it here because it tells the story of the film and goes into the production details. I don't want to say the same things here again as if I've never said them to you before, but there is a key component that much of what I said there was coming from a Jason-centric point of view. I did a lot of talking about Friday the 13th's legacy and how Jason had been handled over the decades, how his original home studio, Paramount, approached these talks, this, that, and the other. There's not as much Freddy coverage in there because that was not the main topic last year. So how about this? I will open up here today from a more Freddy and Nightmare stance to set a more appropriate scene. Then I will replay that video, and then I'll come back with even more details that weren't there before. I mean, I just read an entire book about rejected Freddy vs. Jason scripts, and I can't wait to tell you about some of these, so I think that's a pretty good plan of action. How about you? Is today's video going to be the longest one in this entire series? Hey, it might be. Let's see how it goes. This is the main event, after all. I want to send things out with a bang. Welcome to the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, Freddy vs. Jason and Reviled Remake. Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts, and more. You can also buy my book, Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Video Game Compendium, at the link in the description or over on Patreon. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. Freddy vs. Jason hit the big screen in 2003, but this wasn't a conversation that started getting kicked around just a few years prior. This Clash of the Titans had been pitched to New Line Cinema dating all the way back to the mid-1980s. By who? By Paramount, the studio in charge of Jason Voorhees and Friday the 13th. Why? Well, why does anything happen in Hollywood? It's about money, of course. All throughout the 80s, Jason Voorhees was doing what he does. He was slaughtering people. Sometimes on Camp Crystal Lake, sometimes in New York. Sometimes he wore his traditional hockey mask, sometimes he looked like this. Or like this. What were they doing? If you're not picking up what I'm putting down, let me say it to you bluntly. The further things went, the more Friday the 13th fell into what was basically a complete fucking mess. Each film's budget was getting bigger while the box office returns were getting smaller. In the film industry, this is commonly referred to as a problem. Seeing the writing on the wall that Jason was losing steam and audiences in general were just moving on to other genres and styles of film, Paramount consistently reached out to New Line. Hey guys, we got Jason. You've got Freddy. These two fighting each other would be huge money. Let's do it. New Line Cinema, for years, mostly ignored these conversations from Paramount regarding the Freddy vs. Jason fight. Why? Because Freddy still had gas in the tank. Freddy was still heating up while Jason was cooling off. They didn't need this fight. But as we've seen by now, that would all change. Freddy cooled off the same way Jason cooled off, to the point that New Line Cinema were ready to let the character go entirely in 1991 with Freddy's Dead. It was right around then that this fight finally looked like it might actually happen. Paramount, watching Jason's box office machete get duller and duller with each subsequent swing, loosened their grip on the character to the point that they were willing to license him out to other studios. Sean Cunningham, Friday the 13th's co-creator and actually a little-known assistant director on the very first Nightmare on Elm Street, he had an in at Paramount in the shape of Mike DeLuca. Mike DeLuca co-wrote Freddy's Dead, so having a key figure from Friday buddying up with a key figure from Nightmare, that certainly did not hurt the negotiations. And it was negotiations, after all, that had been the breaking point all this time. Even when New Line didn't need the Jason fight, even when Freddy Krueger was still hot, they entertained the conversation a time or two. The closest the fight came to being booked was right after Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, which was back in 1986. These talks fizzled out when neither studio was willing to budge on who would get the box office. So that was that. Jason wound up fighting someone else who was basically a stand-in for Carrie in a movie that I think is a piece of shit. Watch the history of Friday the 13th. I'll tell you all about it. Fast forward to the early 90s, Paramount licenses out Jason to New Line Cinema, and here we go. Freddy vs. Jason. Nope! Wes Craven's New Nightmare is announced, a film that takes every single second of established Nightmare on Elm Street lore, all 6 films, all 10 years of it, and throws it away. All of these stories were just movies. Freddy Krueger isn't even real. I think I already said this in the history of Friday the 13th, so forgive me for repeating myself, but I cannot imagine being Sean Cunningham at this point. You've worked so hard to get this fight made. You have worked so hard to get both of these characters on the same roster. The fight is finally possible, and then they just do something else. You know, imagine if Sting, after all of his years at WCW and then TNA, he finally signed with WWE. You can do Sting versus The Undertaker, a match everyone had been clamoring for 30 years, and then you just do Sting versus Triple H instead. So, with New Nightmare taking priority over the project that had already been in discussions for like 15 years, what does Jason do? He goes to hell. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, was released right before New Nightmare, basically as a way to just keep the character active until Freddy was available again. Seriously, this is how fucked up all this was. And fucked up, oh my god. Jason Goes to Hell is a rotten pile of garbage that barely even has Jason in it. So both movies come out, neither one of them makes good money, and now is finally the time. Right? Freddy versus Jason. Nope! Even when both characters were under the same roof, Sean Cunningham and Mike DeLuca both had equal say on how this movie was going to get made. They both had to come to an absolute agreement for anything to progress. Even with scripts flowing in constantly, it still took over 10 years for something to finally come together. It is worth noting that, yes, Freddy Krueger's glove emerges to pull Jason's burnt and broken mask into the underworld at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, which seems like a reveal that the showdown was right around the corner, but it wasn't. There was nothing to this at all. Jason Goes to Hell's director, Adam Marcus, simply tacked this on at the end because he thought it was cool. Much like the Necronomicon from Evil Dead appearing in the movie. None of this has any bearing on what was to come in any way, shape, or form, which is both irresponsible and just stupid. But if you've seen this movie or you've ever heard him speak about his work, that's clear enough already. And while we're talking about Adam Marcus, why don't we touch on his idea for Freddy vs. Jason? Why not? His movie would have centered around Freddy and Jason being revealed as Hell's assassins. The devil would pitch the two slashers a body count contest, the winner of which could stay on Earth as Hell's, official assassin or something. The movie would have starred Nancy Thompson and Tommy Jarvis, the most well-known heroes from each franchise, and Creighton Duke, this guy from Adam's own movie, Jason Goes to Hell. What would Creighton Duke's role be? Well, he would obviously be the protector of Nancy and Tommy. You know Nancy Thompson, right? She was killed in 1987 back in Dream Warriors, so it doesn't make any sense that she would be here in the mid-90s. But before that, she beat Freddy Krueger all by herself. Tommy Jarvis, 3-0 against Jason Voorhees. Undefeated. Well, he was 2-0 against Jason. He was 1-0 against Roy. Look, either way, long story. Tommy was untouchable. He don't need nobody's help. Creighton Duke is nobody. He's nothing. In his one movie, Jason Goes to Hell, he's completely worthless. And Adam Marcus is going to have this guy protecting Nancy and Tommy? Go fuck yourself. With that, we can move on from any further Adam Marcus conversation, and not a moment too soon. From the early 90s to 2003, when this movie was finally made, it's said that 16 different screenwriters turned in nearly a dozen official, completed Freddy vs. Jason scripts. Where did I get this information from? Why, from Slash of the Titans, The Road to Freddy vs. Jason by Dustin McNeil. I cannot recommend this book enough. Grab a copy on Amazon. You'll love it. That's where I got mine. This is where I learned about the first official script turned in for the big fight. It was titled Nightmare 13, Freddy Meets Jason. This one was penned by Louis Abernathy, a buddy of Sean Cunningham's. The story centered around a cult of Freddy Krueger fanatics looking to resurrect the Springwood Slasher. To do this, they would need to impregnate a virgin. The virgin abducted in this script was a 13-year-old girl with special needs, that's... Jesus Christ, man. Members of this cult are killing people, including the boyfriend of our main girl. Now, our main girl and her friends take the dead boyfriend's heart and they use it to resurrect Jason to battle the cult and stop Freddy Krueger. Jason in this movie actually listens to our main heroine's plan. He shakes her hand and he fights on the good guy's behalf. In the end, Jason stomps on Freddy's skull, splattering it all over the ground. And there's a secondary villain that Jason shoves a shotgun so far up his ass you can see it in his mouth. Jason then pulls the trigger, resulting in a beautiful fucking bloodbath. At the end, police blow Jason away, and as he falls down, he reaches into his chest cavity, pulls out the heart that he borrowed from the main girl's boyfriend, and he gives it back to her as he dies, which is just out of control. I kind of like it a little bit. But then at the end, the main girl answers the phone and Freddy's tongue comes out of it, so cliffhanger alert. And that's just the first script that came in. In 2000, David Bergantino, the guy who recently wrote Dying Light, The Beast, he pitched a video game called Freddy vs. Jason: Hell Unbound. This game would let you play as either Freddy or Jason in a competition to kill as many people as possible. Sony's PlayStation and Sega's Dreamcast were looked at as the home consoles of choice, with an arcade release coming first. This also never saw the light of day, sadly. Hell, I would play this right now. Can we get this going? Anybody? Back to movies and back to the 90s. A good portion of these scripts focused the fight on revenge. Now, revenge for what? Well, it turns out Jason did not just drown as a boy on the campground. He was actually and murdered by a camp counselor, and that camp counselor's name was Fred Krueger. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I don't particularly care for this idea at all, and I am overjoyed that it did not make its way into the final product. In 1994, a script came through that many have heard about. This one came from Brandon Braga and Ronald Moore. This one was titled Jason vs. Freddy, and this is the one which featured the trial of Jason Voorhees. Maybe you've heard of this concept. I know I had heard this in passing over the years. What you may not know is that this was not the Jason from the movies. It was the real Jason Voorhees, the man that inspired the Friday the 13th franchise. Yeah, Jason vs. Freddy uses the Freddy Krueger from the movies, but it knew Nightmare's Jason into a real person who had been portrayed by actors in fictional films. You following me? Figure all that out. And I'll hit you with one more unused script before we buckle down and talk about the real deal. In 1998, King of the Hill writers Glenn Berger and Jonathan Abel put together a plot which revealed the story behind Jason's fucked up eye. The audience actually gets to see what Jason sees through this eye. And what does he see? He sees Freddy Krueger. Yes, Jason had been fighting for revenge against Freddy Krueger his entire life. Every victim that has fallen by Jason's blade, he thought they were Freddy. He just thought Freddy kept popping back up, so he had to keep cutting him back down. Why is he searching for revenge? Flashback to that angle I mentioned earlier where adult Freddy did what he did to little boy Jason. Yes, this script used that idea too. This movie did add something original though, which is that the final girl would take control of her dream and she would manifest all of her anger and all of her rage into Jason, who would transform into like this 25-foot tall hulking behemoth. He would impale Freddy, he would pull him close, and he would actually say, "Freddy's dead," before a lightning strike blew them both away. So many ideas, so many writers, so many scripts, so many rejections. For a fight as big as this, I guess I understand wanting to find the right team and the right story. And while the wait was extremely long, I gotta say, I'm really glad a number of these previously proposed concepts were thrown in the garbage. I feel like now is a good time to insert my previous coverage of Freddy vs. Jason, and then we will reconvene when the smoke clears. How's that sound? I feel like I've been talking about how Freddy vs. Jason wasn't happening for like 6 months at this point, so it's a relief to finally be getting to the meat of the matter, to finally be able to talk about the actual production, you know? I can't imagine how this felt for Sean Cunningham, Jason's co-creator, who brought the rights of his series to New Line to... Oh, wait, what? After all this time, the guy who gave the go-ahead for Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X didn't have anything to do with Freddy vs. Jason? That's hilarious. Sean Cunningham acted as a producer in name only, according to writers Damian Shannon and Mark Swift. How about it? Cunningham would even tell Crystal Lake Memories author Peter M. Brack that he believes the Freddy vs. Jason director, Ronnie Yu, had no idea how to direct for story, which is very, very rich coming from him. But let's not waste any more time on Cunningham. Let's talk about the genesis of Freddy vs. Jason. The aforementioned Damian Shannon and Mark Swift were the men eventually hired to pen this script, but this thing was passed around for years and years. Damian Shannon and Mark Swift got the gig, and I can't really point to what they'd done prior, as this is the first Hollywood credit on either guy's resume. It should be noted, however, that their script was timed by New Line Cinema, and it came in way too long. We're talking about 2.5 hours. I don't know about you, but I don't need a movie like this to be 2.5 hours long. Have you guys seen Terrifier 2? Because I have. Listen, I love that director. I love what he's doing with that franchise and completely blowing away all box office expectations for an independent film. Hopefully that makes a huge change in the industry, but Terrifier 2 is 2.5 hours long. And it's way too long. As of the time that I'm recording this, I haven't seen Terrifier 3 yet, but from what I've read, it's just about the same length, which is very disappointing. Terrifier 2's biggest problem is that it's too fucking long. There's too much happening in that movie, and I think it was in desperate need of being pared down. Luckily, that's exactly what happened to Freddy vs. Jason. David Goyer, though he's not credited for doing so, penned a rewrite of the Shannon Swift script. He cut this thing down from 2.5 hours to about 90 minutes. And what we get as a result is a boom movie. This shit never slows down. Parts of it feel rushed and shoehorned in as a result, like Freddy Krueger literally explaining the plot to the audience as to avoid any confusion, but hey, it is what it is.
Not strong enough yet. Well, I will be soon enough. I'll let Jason have some fun.
Before we go any further on production details, though, I would like to tell the story of this movie. Are you ready? We've been building to this for 6 months here on this channel. In Hollywood, it took 15 years. Strap in. What happens when a good-looking woman gets naked at Camp Crystal Lake? She gets stalked and killed by Jason Voorhees. But when her corpse reanimates into the form of another victim, it becomes clear that something is off. The arrival of the long-dead Pamela Voorhees adds to our skepticism, but in short order, the man pulling the strings is revealed. The puppet master who awakens Jason Voorhees from a decade-long slumber is none other than Freddy Krueger. After years and years of terrorizing Elm Street, the Springwood Slasher's crimes were covered up, completely redacted, left behind, and purposely erased from memory. With his influence dissipated, Freddy's powers were stripped away. Krueger didn't infiltrate the dreams of Jason Voorhees to entertain himself. He sent the Crystal Lake Killer to Elm Street to reignite the conversation around himself. That's brilliant. Elm Street is full of attractive, party-going teenagers, and in short order, Jason Voorhees gets back to work. The word of these grisly murders spreads throughout the school, and when a police officer mentions Freddy Krueger by name, what do they say? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube? Freddy regains his powers, and when he's ready to get back to business, Jason swoops in and steals his prey.
She's mine! Mine!
Before he can get back to spilling the blood of the innocent, Freddy's gonna have to get Jason out of the picture. And what better way to do that than to drag him into the dream world?
We gotta go! Let me handle this, bitch. Come to Freddy.
In this realm, Freddy is in control. Jason butchers him in the opening seconds of the showdown, but Freddy's just working him. This, right here, is what we call a beatdown. Jason is brutalized like never before. He just gets his ass kicked. And Freddy's loving every second of it. But even here, in a place where he doesn't belong, Jason is no slouch. By pure chance, Freddy discovers Jason's one true weakness, his fear of water. Now, is this a convenient plot device inconsistent with prior films in the Friday the 13th franchise? Sure, but it works. I'll take, hey, he's actually afraid of water, over, hey, he actually can't be killed unless his relatives we just created out of thin air are the ones to kill him with the Evil Dead knife. You know what I mean? Rendered down to a useless, crying, pathetic child, Freddy Krueger presses into Jason's subconscious, exploring the depths of his depravity. While all of this is going on, our main characters, who I'm pretty much completely ignoring because who really cares, are transporting the unconscious Jason Voorhees back to Crystal Lake. The plan is to wake him up on his own turf. Laurie will act as bait and pull Freddy into the real world where the final battle can commence. And guess what? This works. Man, these characters are geniuses. The second round takes place on Jason's stomping grounds, and Freddy's face when he realizes what's happened is priceless. With the playing field now leveled, Jason whoops Freddy's ass like Freddy owes him money. Well, at first, even without the power to manipulate his surroundings, this is still Freddy Krueger we're talking about. He's smarter than Jason, he's faster than Jason, and he turns the tables in a big way. This is, without a doubt, the most violent and insane fight I've ever seen in any movie. When Freddy jams his blades into Jason's eyes, I thought it was over. The music alone, I was like, oh my god, this is it. Freddy beat Jason. And that's when our heroes light the battleground on fire. Jason plunges his hand straight into Freddy's guts. He rips his fucking arm off. Freddy stabs the machete straight into Jason's heart and boom! It's over, right? Wrong. Freddy aims to kill Laurie and Will when Jason impales Freddy with his own fucking arm before sinking into the depths of Crystal Lake. Laurie chops Freddy's head clean off. Our heroes escape, and sometime later, Jason emerges from the abyss with Freddy Krueger's severed head in his hand. With a wink, we fade to black. Holy shit. Holy shit. I love this movie. Absolutely love it. Is some of the acting bad? Yes. Do I wish that the first fight would have taken place a little before the 1 hour and 5 minute mark? Possibly. But other than that, I don't know if I have any complaints. We wanted to see these guys go to war, and they fucking did. Several times. Knock down, drag out, gruesome, awful, gory, violent fights. Director Ronnie Yu was asked by the crew how much fake blood did he need. Did he need buckets? Did he need gallons? His response was gasoline barrels. 24 of them. And he was not joking. Now, I skipped practically all of the storyline details on the teenagers, and maybe that's selling them a bit short because they are kind of entertaining, they are funny, they're all good looking, but if you really want to focus on that, just watch the fucking movie. I wanted to dial it in on the Clash of the Titans. You know what though? We should focus on the solo work each killer did before the clash. Freddy's murder of Mark Davis is fantastic, and this is Freddy's only kill throughout the entire picture. And before you Freddy fans complain, this is a plot point. Jason is stealing the spotlight. If Freddy got 25 kills of his own, he'd have no reason to get Jason out of the picture. You get that, right?
Pass on a little message for me, will ya?
I feel like we should address the fact that for the first time in 15 years, Jason Voorhees is not being played by Kane Hodder. Under the mask this time is stuntman Ken Kirsinger, who we've actually already seen in this series. There he is. And he's not just the diner guy. Ken actually suited up as Jason for like 10 seconds. These were scenes that the director didn't want Kane Hodder doing for a number of reasons. Kane was extremely dejected after not being offered the role for a 5th time, and the call to go with someone else came from producer Stokely Chaffin. According to Crystal Lake Memories, Stokely wanted somebody who wasn't a total robot, and she apparently found Hodder's body language in his previous films cartoony. I've shared my opinion on Kane Hodder's work as Jason. I'm not into the constant heaving breaths and the never-ending fists and flexing. Ken Kirsinger's take on Jason is very different. Director Ronnie Yu had this idea that Jason is slow. Very slow in his approach. Until it's time to strike. And at that moment, he's got the speed of a rattlesnake. Before I go any further, I do have to address something. There is a long-standing rumor that WWE legend Rey Mysterio appears in this movie. And that rumor is not true. At all. Here, right here, when Freddy flies out of Crystal Lake. For 20 years, people have been claiming this is Rey Mysterio. Why? I guess just because this stunt kind of resembles his entrance to the ring. Now, not only is this stuntman's body not even close to being the same dimensions as Rey's, but you can just look in the credits. This guy's name is Doug Chapman, so now you know. If you've ever participated in spreading that rumor, first of all, you should have looked into it for yourself. It's easy to do. And secondly, stop spreading this around. It's not true. It was never true. Anytime you're looking at a versus movie, you know what the main question is going to be. You're probably asking the question yourself. Who's gonna win? Now, most of the time, there's some sort of draw scenario cooked up where nobody has to take the L, but not all the time. Recently, we saw this in Godzilla vs. Kong. There are 3 fights in that movie. Godzilla cleanly wins 2 of them. The third of which ends with Godzilla looking down at Kong, a free and clear kill shot right there for him, and he doesn't take it. but he gives Kong a look of, you know what happened here. When it comes to Freddy and Jason, the conversation has gone back and forth. Freddy's fans feel like he wins because he winks at the camera. Jason's fans say there's no way Freddy won. Jason's up and walking around carrying Freddy's head. I think it can be argued that nobody wins if you want to go that route, but for me, it's pretty clear. I like both guys, and when it comes down to it, I would take Michael Myers over either of them, so I'm not playing favorites in saying Jason wins. Freddy's fucking head was cut off, and even without Laurie decapitating Freddy, Jason landed the final blow. He took Freddy out with his own arm. I gotta give it to Jason Voorhees. What's really funny is that there was an idea to shoot two endings. One where Freddy wins and one where Jason wins, and you would buy your ticket not knowing which ending you were going to see. For whatever reason, New Line decided against this, which I think is beyond stupid. People 100% would have gone to the movies again to try and catch the other ending. Are you kidding me? It's widely known that Pinhead from the Hellraiser franchise was once considered for an appearance at the end of this movie, acting as something of a referee, but this was never really going to happen. It couldn't. New Line didn't have any rights to that character at all. A final round taking place in hell in front of Satan was even written at one point. There's concept art of it. But it was deemed that the set would have been too expensive to build, and a CGI alternative would have looked like shit, so this idea was also dropped. There is one alternate ending that you can find on your DVD or Blu-ray, where Laurie and Will are getting down to business, and Will is revealed to be Freddy in disguise. This was even shown to test audiences who unanimously hated it, so it was scrapped. Good call, in my opinion. This doesn't work for me. I appreciate the complete avoidance of CGI for things that they felt wouldn't work. Even several spots where CGI was used, like Jason being pinballed back and forth in the dream world, that wasn't the original intention. They shot an actual man on wires getting slammed into all of that pipe work, but Ronnie Yu didn't like the way that it looked, so they went with the CGI. 99% of the blood here is practical. Like I said earlier, barrels and barrels were on set at any given time, and I think it was all used in the shoot. What Ronnie Yu did like was wire work, and this is where his Hong Kong martial arts influence shined the brightest. When you see these slashers getting thrown into the water, that's a wire stunt. Jason being propelled by the flying tanks, wire work. That's a real guy. And if we're in the effects section now, I have to put over Freddy's appearance. Across the last several Nightmare films, not including New Nightmare, Freddy looked like shit. He wasn't burnt and scary anymore. He looked like a baby with pink bubblegum all over his head. The burns here are a deep crimson. It looks painful. When he flies out of the water and transforms into what I like to call Red Devil Freddy, get the fuck out of here. This is one of his all-time great looks. Jason is dressed pretty much like Frankenstein's monster in this film, and his blackened, rotting skin is meant to look decayed, as if the blood in his body has set and begun to deteriorate. I feel like I can smell this Jason. Ew. This movie came out when I was 12, going on 13 years old. That year, my buddy Bathroom Money Tim Ewers and I, our Freddy and Jason fandom was at an all-time high. We dressed up as the characters for Halloween that year, and in our free time, we would play Freddy vs. Jason. I'm not kidding. We would put the costumes on and go in the backyard and basically have Freddy vs. Jason wrestling matches. Now, to be clear, we were not performing for anyone. This was 100% for our own entertainment. We would be covered from head to toe in fake blood. Fake blood that we would get by the bottle at Party City. This was a practice that my dad was not a fan of, and I can still hear him in the back of my mind going, "Don't be coming in the house with that bullshit all over you." We would have to stand out there and hose each other down before we came in. I'm not kidding. It was insane. Freddy vs. Jason released on August 15th, 2003. On a budget of $30 million, the film would gross over $116 million worldwide, making it not only the highest grossing Nightmare on Elm Street movie ever made up to this point, but the highest grossing Friday the 13th film ever made, full stop. New Line pulled it all out in the marketing, even hosting a boxing-style weigh-in and press conference. Ronnie Yu saw this movie as, and I quote, Godzilla vs. King Kong plus Aliens plus WWF. And I'll be goddamned if he didn't bring that exact sort of vision to life. 21 years have elapsed since the release of Freddy vs. Jason, and to this day, this was the final performance of Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. It's perfect, in a way, as Englund himself said that he sees this film as a fitting send-off for both of these characters, as well as the prior 20 years of horror. I can't say I disagree, and I think it's awesome that this was his Freddy Krueger swan song. Freddy vs. Jason was 15 years in the making, and in my mind, it lived up to and exceeded the hype. There you have it, Freddy vs. Jason. Now, in the time since I made that video, has my opinion changed at all? Maybe a little bit. Writers Shannon and Swift say that Jason won the fight, but the war continues. Director Ronnie Yu says that Freddy wins. I don't know how he wins, but that's what the director gets out of this whole thing. Looking at it now, coming off watching all of the Nightmare movies, I can see more of the dreamscape. Clearly, it's not the real world. The lake looks completely different, so, you know. Jason is probably dead at the bottom of the lake, but he's not dead, so that's how he's able to dream in the first place. So really, take your pick. It doesn't matter who won the fight, because at the end of the day, most importantly, the movie rules. And going by what we talked about earlier, we know this could have gone so poorly. Across the other scripts, all of those unused scripts, the Slash of the Titans book actually tallies up all of the results. Against Jason Voorhees, Freddy walked away with a total win-loss draw record of 3, 5, and 3. I think it's fair to say that many of the writers approached the film with Freddy as the heel, Jason as the reluctant but necessary babyface, the protector of many of the human leads, in a way. Being that you oftentimes want to send the audience home happy, the good guys tend to pick up the W more often than the bad guys. Think about something like Infinity War. Thanos winning at the end of that movie, for anybody who didn't know that this was necessary for the rest of that story to unfold, this was shocking. What do you mean the bad guy won? What do you mean half of the entire world's population is dead because of him? That's not a common result. Now, are there Freddy-centric details I did not really touch on before? Sure. I didn't mention that director Ronnie Yu initially envisioned the Springwood Slasher fighting with predominantly martial arts techniques. And this was something that Robert Englund had to push back on. Ronnie seriously pictured Freddy hitting the Anthony Pettis-style Showtime kick on Jason, that sort of thing. I am so glad Robert was there to talk sense into him and make the proper adjustments, because that would not have worked. Freddy doesn't even fight like that in Mortal Kombat, for Christ's sake. And one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle here, again, not counting the silly sitcom cameo, this marks Robert Englund's final performance as the character he's most well known for. Without Robert, I think it's fair to say that A Nightmare on Elm Street never reaches its greatest heights. I would go as far as to say it doesn't even come close. In response to Freddy vs. Jason being his final bow, Englund stated the following to Dustin McNeil. Had Freddy vs. Jason not been the monster hit that it was, I might have wanted to come back one more time. But as it stands, I'm glad to have gone out with a home run. And you know what? He did go out with a home run. Freddy vs. Jason washes away the bad taste of Freddy's Dead. Freddy vs. Jason takes that horrendous abomination of a film, that abomination which closed the original Nightmare on Elm Street timeline, and turns it into just one of its many chapters. I mentioned Sting earlier in this series. Let's bring him up one more time for a proper comparison. For nearly 5 years, it looked like the final showing of Sting's career was going to be a match in which he suffered a terrible injury, literally collapsing in the ring, unable to feel his limbs. This was a serious situation. Sting's shocking AEW run, which lasted 29 matches across a 4-year span, this was his Freddy vs. Jason, going out on top like a true icon should. Any legendary character should consider themselves lucky to go out like these two. Robert Englund, thank you. You'll never see this, but thank you nonetheless. One of the best to ever do it, without a doubt. Robert Englund rode off into the sunset after this Titanic showdown. He said that this felt like the perfect way to cap off both these characters and an entire generation of horror, and I have to agree with him. But even though Robert rode off into the sunset, Freddy Krueger did not. You know how these things go. Freddy vs. Jason drew more money than any Freddy or Jason movie ever had, and that's by a wide margin. So the studios look at those numbers and they go, I mean, if these guys are going to make money... If we're just being honest with ourselves, Freddy vs. Jason 2 probably would have made another nice chunk of change. It wouldn't have been as good as the original. It probably would have felt more like a cash-in than a, wow, I can't believe it's finally here. But we don't have to worry about that, as Freddy vs. Jason 2 never happened, despite the cliffhanger ending. A new Nightmare on Elm Street film wouldn't make its way to theaters for 7 years following the release of the iconic showdown, but that's not to say Krueger himself wasn't staying busy. I haven't touched at all on the many, many comic books of the Springwood Slasher, the first of which, believe it or not, was published by Marvel all the way back in 1989. In 2006, Wildstorm began an official Nightmare on Elm Street book, which would run for 8 issues. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, the triple threat match of your worst nightmares, released in 2007. This was a direct sequel to the 2003 film, and yes, this was an adaptation of the treatment written by New Line's Jeff Katz. He wanted this to be a movie, but for myriad reasons, it never came close to going into production. If you're interested in this story and who wins this triple threat match, I covered this comic in great detail on my show Scream Sequence. Check it out if you so desire. A series of 5 novels released between 2005 and 2006, none of which I'm really going to dive into here today. To be honest with you, I don't know a goddamn thing about these books. I had never heard of them until just now, and I'm not particularly concerned with whatever may or may not be going on in these stories. I'm simply bringing these up to send the message home that New Line Cinema was allowing the Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street names to be used out in the wild. They just weren't doing it themselves. All of this brings us to 2008, when Michael Bay's production company, Platinum Dunes, struck a deal with New Line Cinema to co-produce a brand new Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And by brand new, I mean the timeline would be brand new. 26 years after the release of the original, it was finally time. This was the big reset. Freddy Krueger was far from the first horror icon Platinum Dunes gave the reboot treatment to. In 2003, it was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I also covered this film on Scream Sequence. Give that a watch. In 2009, it was Jason's turn with Friday the 13th. These 2 movies alone made for a combined box office haul of just about $200 million. So maybe you can imagine why New Line eventually gave the go-ahead to Bay and his boys to give Freddy a Platinum Dunes remake, right? This was easy money. We had already seen what A Nightmare on Elm Street looks like without Wes Craven. It can be anything from silly to stupid to downright atrocious. What we had not seen up to this point was what this franchise looks like without Robert Englund wearing the razor glove and brown fedora. Stepping into the shoes of the bastard son of 100 maniacs would be Jackie Earle Haley, fresh off his performance as Rorschach in Watchmen. You may recall in part 1 of this series that Jackie actually accompanied Johnny Depp to his audition for Glenn in the 1984 original Nightmare, kind of bringing this whole thing full circle for him. Is Jackie's Freddy anything like Robert's? No, not really, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. First, I'd like to talk about this film's director, a man by the name of Samuel Bayer. Known predominantly for his work in directing music videos, Samuel had never directed a feature film before this opportunity came along, nor has he directed another feature film in the 15 years since this one released. It's almost like it's not something he really had any interest in doing. And if you're wondering about which music videos Samuel has directed, here's a quick sample.
Mama, I'm coming home. Let me out now. It's dangerous. Welcome to a new kind of tension. To carry on, we'll carry on.
You've probably heard one or two of those songs, right? Yeah, Samuel Bayer is the real deal in his line of work. There's no doubt about it. Just looking at the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, Jesus Christ, it looks like a music video more often than it doesn't. This was a weird time, man. Platinum Dunes were so attracted to music video directors steering their films. Marcus Nispel was a music video guy. He directed the remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th. There was a vision here, clearly, a plan to, no matter what, deliver a movie that looked stylish, a movie that was slick, and more than anything, a movie that looked like something that young people were already accustomed to watching. You probably know, before I even get into this movie in any real detail, that its reputation is not the greatest. There are those who would rather sit through even the worst Nightmare sequels before they're willing to press play on this remake. Is that because this movie is completely unnecessary? That might play a part in it. Is it because everybody, from director Samuel Bayer to screenwriter Wesley Strick, from star Rooney Mara to producer Brad Fuller, nobody seemed to really get it at all? That might also play a part in it. This 2010 remake being unanimously rejected by fans and critics alike probably has something to do with it not feeling like a Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger doesn't feel like Freddy Krueger. He's just a monster with a freaky voice, killing people, going out of his way to come off as edgy and scary as he possibly can, which doesn't work. At no point did Robert Englund ever feel like he was trying to be scary. He just was. You never knew what the hell his Freddy was going to do next. You never knew what he was going to say next. Jackie's Freddy Krueger taunts his victims with threats of incoming torture. His kills are hands-on gore fests. Yeah, you can ram your entire arm through somebody's chest cavity. That's cool, but that's not really Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger likes to puppeteer a bedsheet, snaking itself around your neck to make you look like you took your own life. Freddy Krueger likes to take the shape of your bathroom appliances in a situation that, once again, forces you to harm yourself. Robert's Freddy, a lot of the time, was hands-off. He made you the fool. He forced his victims to take the fall, to rob them of their agency, to strip them of their dignity. Jackie's Freddy does this one time, in the opening scene, which is maybe the most entertaining part of the picture. And it's not just Krueger that's the problem, but the other chills as well. This remake recreates the glove in the bathtub to no pop. The body bag in the hallway, rather than Tina speaking to Nancy as if nothing is wrong while she's soaked in her own blood inside a body bag, this character screams a wretched tone while even more blood pours from her every orifice. What does this accomplish? More blood and a creepy yell? She's already dead. She's already zipped up in a body bag full of her own blood. In the original, the character is standing there having a conversation with her friend, seemingly unaware of the fact that she's passed away and she's already zipped up. That's what makes it creepy. That's what makes it feel like a nightmare. None of it adds up. Think about Tim Curry's Pennywise and Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise. Tim Curry's Pennywise acts like a clown. He's loud, he's obnoxious, he's a jokester, he's a clown. The fact that he's also an otherworldly being beyond our realm of comprehension is just icing on the cake. Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is, at first glance, trying to scare you. The color has been stripped out of the outfit. The makeup is now much more threatening. I mean, for fuck's sake, the lines under the eyes are now the exact same shape as the markings on a cheetah, a ferociously deadly predator. Tim Curry is a clown who's a little off. You wouldn't want to be caught in a room with this guy alone. Bill Skarsgård is clearly going to stab you to death and play with your blood. It's a different feel, a different vibe, and it's exactly what we have going on with Freddy here. What we will do now is trek through the story of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 2010 remake, obviously. And being that this is a remake, there's not that much to say here. There's not that much new going on. And what is new isn't really any good. We open in the Springwood Diner. Dean, this tall drink of water, is clearly having a hard time.
You're not real! I am now.
So boom, we're moving. From here, it's kind of the same old thing. Many of the characters are pretty much the same, though their names and roles have been changed. This isn't Tina, it's Chris. This isn't Rod, it's Jesse. They're not dating, they're exes. Tina/Chris still gets killed the same way in front of Rod/Jesse. Rod/Jesse still gets arrested for it, but he doesn't get Epsteined, aka fake suicided in his jail cell. He gets full-on impaled in the dream realm, which is far less creative and just run-of-the-mill slasher stuff. Not really up to Freddy's standards, you know? If you're sensing less creativity and more beat you over the head with everything about this remake, yes, you're 100% spot on. There is nothing that this movie lets you even think about for half a second before spelling it out for you immediately. With those other characters out of the way, Nancy and Quentin become our leads. Nancy is played by Rooney Mara, and she might be the dullest, most boring lead character in a horror movie I've ever seen. She shows zero emotion. Ever. Not even when she comes face to face with Freddy.
Little Nancy.
I set an alarm.
Quentin, played by Kyle Gallner, isn't far off. I guess this was just the 2010 feel or something. Everyone's mumbling and just boring. This remake is the first and only time that Freddy Krueger is quite literally depicted as a child. It had been alluded to in the past. You could read between the lines that maybe he got into that sort of thing, but in this one, Nancy and Quentin literally find photographs Freddy had taken of Nancy when she was in kindergarten. You can probably imagine the type of photos I'm talking about. And not only that, but everything Freddy says to Nancy is,
You're my number one. This dress. Your mouth says no, but your body says yeah.
yeah. Again, they're beating you over the head with it. In the end, Nancy pulls Freddy into the real world. She chops his hand off and slits his throat with the broken off slicer of a paper cutter. And that's that. Well, actually, that's not that. The got your mom swerve ski is pulled again here. This time much nastier. That's a cool effect. And that is that. Is this remake as bad as people say it is? I guess that depends on who's saying it and why they're saying it's bad. If you're asking me, I'll tell you, I don't like this movie at all. I would go as far as to say that of all the remakes the icons have gotten, whether it's Leatherface, Michael, Jason, This one's probably the worst. Actually, you know what? Chucky got a remake too, and that movie is garbage. But either way, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake just doesn't get it. It's boring. It lacks the charm, the wit, the creativity. It lacks everything of the original. It's got more violence. It's more gory. That's fine, but I was never really coming to A Nightmare on Elm Street for violence and gore. If I want that, I'm going to watch some of the Romero zombie movies. I'm going to watch Saw. I'm going to watch Terrifier. I want to talk about the look of our main man here. Freddy's face in this remake was designed specifically to look like, and I quote, an actual burn victim. The producers repeatedly stress in the making of that they wanted him to look like a monster, and I don't know, man. I'm not really down with this feeling that somebody who has been burned is horrifying. They're scary by default. You know, you don't want to be around them. When I think of burn victims, I think of images I've seen of people who have suffered a terrible accident, a life-changing scenario, and they're doing the best they can to just keep pushing forward with this terrible hand they were dealt. I've known people who have burn scars, and maybe it's just me getting older and more sensitive, but I do genuinely get a feeling that the designers here missed the mark. It sends the message that somebody with burn scars is inherently scary, and I don't like that. Robert's Freddy was always stylized. His appearance was always heightened. I never looked at him and thought, oh, he got caught in a house fire. I looked at him and thought, yo, that's fucking Freddy Krueger. What do you guys think about this? Do you see what I mean, or do you not care? Let me know. I'm interested. There is something to be said about the fact that producer Brad Fuller, in that same behind-the-scenes featurette, he says some shit like, well, you know fans are gonna hate it because it's not their Freddy Krueger, so we just have to commit and jump off the cliff. If you know fans aren't going to like it, what are you even doing it for? He says other shit too, like we had to make the franchise our own. Brother, you're redoing shots from a movie that came out in 1984. Make it your own? How? One of the other co-producers was talking about like, oh, you never saw in the other Nightmare films why Freddy was going after the kids, so we really explore that here. Have you not seen a single Nightmare on Elm Street movie? What do you mean we don't know why he's doing it? When it comes down to it, I maintain that this movie never should have been made. If I'm gonna go out of my way to try and find positive things to say, I guess I can put over Jackie Earle Haley as a creepy killer. Not as Freddy Krueger. I don't like this whole thing for Freddy Krueger at all, but if Jackie were playing an original character in an original movie and he was this brutal and weird, that might be kind of an interesting film. Even some of the dialogue here, like,
Oh, God. No. Just me.
that's not bad. The nail in the coffin of this movie is that it's called A Nightmare on Elm Street, man. And I guess some of these sets are cool. I like the Silent Hill-esque transforming classroom with the burnt walls and the flooded floors. I hate that they use CGI for the head through the wall spot. And look, I'm out. I'm out of positive things to say. I don't have to do this. I don't have to bend over backwards to look for compliments on this thing. It sucks. It completely missed the point. It doesn't get it. It didn't even get a sequel, so it started over the whole franchise for what? For a one-time box office pop? And it did pop a number, sure, drawing $117 million on a $35 million budget, but so what? It was a one and done. Wes Craven, who was still alive at this time, was not contacted or consulted even once regarding this remake. Robert Englund put it over, but, you know, he's a pro. He's not going to come out and say that somebody's art sucks because he's too positive of a guy for that, and good for him. I don't think there's a single soul out there who, when A Nightmare on Elm Street comes up in conversation, this is where their mind goes. And that's an interesting way to draw this to a close, isn't it? Where does your mind go when you think of A Nightmare on Elm Street? I'm somebody who dreams very vividly, every single night. More often than not, I can remember my dreams after I wake up. Many of my dreams are nightmares, unfortunately for me, but what can you do? I have a recurring nightmare of getting caught in a mass shooting. That one's not fun. Maybe I'm showing my age here, but I just had a nightmare 2 days ago that my neighbors upstairs left their water running and it was leaking through my ceiling. Now that's a problem. When I think of A Nightmare on Elm Street, I think of Freddy Krueger, obviously. I think of what Freddy represents. He's the spider toying with you while you're stuck in his web. He's the ground you're careening toward after losing your balance at the edge of a cliff. Freddy Krueger is the embodiment of childhood fears because he was unavoidable. He was inevitable. Chucky? I'll kick his ass through the uprights for 3 points. Michael and Jason? You can't catch me in a car, bitch. Ghostface? Can't fight. I'll double leg his dumb ass and put him to sleep. But Freddy Krueger, speaking of sleep, I need it. I'm old. I'm tired. I'm fucked. A Nightmare on Elm Street was a looming danger, the sword of Damocles, forever hanging overhead, sure to fall someday and cut my run short. This franchise gave us something none of the other icons could. It forced us to confront our fears. And in doing so, we learned, trial by fire, that we got this. We can handle this. We walk into Freddy's domain every night. And every morning, we wake up feeling like, shit, he can't get me. From Wes Craven to Robert Englund, from Heather Langenkamp to John Saxon, Patricia Arquette, and everyone in between, I'm grateful for A Nightmare on Elm Street. In the past, I've shown photos of myself dressed as Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees for Halloween. Well, here's me as Jason and Bathroom Money Tim Ewers as Freddy Krueger. This was probably 2002. This was the era where we would dress up and play Freddy vs. Jason, basically having wrestling matches in costume in the backyard, calling spots and getting stabbed, sliced, and diced, coating ourselves in bottles and bottles of fake blood. These are days I'll never forget, man. And that just goes to show, sometimes nightmares aren't so bad. Thank you for watching. Oh, there it is. That's the history of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Thank you so much for joining me through this journey of the land of Freddy Krueger. If you enjoyed this series and you want to support me, my channel, and my work, you can, either right here under a YouTube channel membership or over on Patreon. It would mean a lot to me to have you in my corner. You guys are how videos like this get made in the first place. I mean that literally. Couldn't do it without you. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.